50% of people that have heart attacks find out by dying immediately. Having glucose levels that are too high inflames the lining of your arteries. That inflammation, it causes a heart attack. It causes a stroke, blindness, Alzheimer's. They'd say, "Doc, you can't tell me oatmeal is not healthy." Take your blood sugar before you eat some oatmeal, and then take your blood sugar 30 minutes later, and I just don't have to have that debate anymore.
Dr. Ford Brewer.
As a leading voice in heart and metabolic health, he's reversed 20 years of plaque in 1 year.
Now he's helping people worldwide stop heart attacks before they even have the chance to strike.
What are your 3 best tips to prevent a heart attack and unclog the arteries?
Number 1, test, don't guess. You make it to your 50s or 60s and then boom, you could have a heart attack. And we think that that's the way reality just is. It doesn't have to be that way. 52% of us, starting at age 18, have prediabetes. Why don't you just test for it? So people, they say, well, I wish there was something I could do at home. Well, it just so happens that there is. It's called, I've only met 3 people that actually reversed their plaque, but I haven't met anyone who cannot reverse their risk.
Chances are you're eating one of these deadly foods right now, and you don't even realize it. They're silently clogging your arteries, putting you at risk of a heart attack or a stroke. And in fact, one of them is a common fat you might even have in your kitchen. Today I'm joined by the wonderful Dr. Ford Brewer. He's a physician with over 40 years of experience. He reversed 20 years of arterial plaque in just 1 year. We're also going to show you a simple 1-minute test that you can do at your home right now to see if your arteries are clogged. This information could literally save your life. So Dr. Brewer, my first question, if someone is just watching this, maybe they're 50s, 60s, 70s, maybe even in their 80s, how likely is it that they'll have some form of clogged arteries that could lead to a heart attack without them even knowing it?
It's very likely. If you get to age 40, it's probably about 40%. In your 50s, about 50%. It starts to increase. Age 60 and 70, you're starting to get up to 80 to 90% of us have plaque in our arteries. And that's a really big deal because vascular disease is the real problem here. They talk about cardiovascular disease. The cardio part is a little bit confusing. People use that term because heart attack is the number 1 cause of death, but vascular disease is the same thing, whether it causes a stroke, in other words, the clot hits your brain, or a heart attack. And stroke used to be the number 2 cause of death. It's still the number 1 cause of permanent disability.
Okay, so what is the difference between vascular disease and cardiovascular disease in case somebody doesn't know the difference?
So it's a very important point. Most people think of cardiovascular disease and they get a little bit confused. They think it's only the vessels in the arteries. The vessels are arteries in the heart. Now, that's cardiovascular disease, but really it's vascular disease that we want to be focused on because the number 1 cause of permanent disability is stroke. Stroke comes from almost exactly the same problem as heart attack. Heart attack is the number 1 cause of death. Stroke is the number 1 cause of permanent disability. So go back and think about what causes this. Let's go back about 20, 30, maybe 40 years. And it starts to speak to your population, your community, as well as mine. I'm a low carber. Why? Because having glucose levels that are too high in your bloodstream for year after year inflames the lining of your arteries. High insulin can inflame it as well. So you start getting this inflammation. That inflammation then leads to scarring or plaque. Your immune system starts to read that scarring or plaque and starts to create what it usually does. It's called inflammation. Just like inflammation that you would have when you have a cold, you have it in your respiratory tract. You get that same kind of inflammation using the same kind of inflammatory cells and mechanisms in your arteries. Now, we've discovered that in medicine over the past 10 or 20 years, but doctors still don't know what to do about it yet. They still look at LDL, quote, bad cholesterol. They need to be looking more at inflammation. What happens next is inflammation destabilizes that plaque. That inflammation can cause a clot. If the clot's big enough and it goes to the heart, it causes a heart attack. If it's big enough and it goes to the brain, it causes a stroke. If it's tiny little microscopic clots happening over and over and over again, microscopically, your brain can start to look like Swiss cheese, and you end up with Alzheimer's. Your heart can start to look like Swiss cheese microscopically, and you end up with heart failure. This process is also the number one cause of blindness, kidney failure, and erectile dysfunction.
Wow, I wouldn't even know that it was the cause of erectile dysfunction. So Viagra potentially is not the fix for that one. We need to fix our glucose and fix our insulin. So you mentioned before that a lot of people have clogged arteries and don't even know it. So I'm 42. I'm going to be one of them that has a percentage of clogged arteries. How does my audience, those beautiful people watching, or myself know? What are some symptoms to know that it's obvious that I have clogged arteries?
That is a great question, and I think that is the essence of one of the issues, one of the opportunities here. We live in a world where people think that, you know what, you make it to your 50s or at least 60s, and then you could have a heart attack. Boom, and 50% of people that have heart attacks find out by dying immediately. And we think that that's the way reality should be, or just is. It shouldn't be that way. It doesn't have to be that way. Now, to your point, none of us feel symptoms when we have plaque, but there are ways to look for it. And there are several different ways. There's one of the most common things that you'll hear from the standard medical community is, why don't we go do a stress test? I wrote a whole book about why we don't just go do a stress test. A stress test is not going to show anything until you get 50% blockage of those arteries. Most heart attacks and strokes occur way before 50% blockage. So there's got to be a better way. And there is. These ways of looking for plaque are not something that your typical doctors do very much. They don't make very much money. They're not something that you can pay for a clinic with. Calcium score is something that people have been doing for about 20 years. Calcium score is a CT of the heart. It shows calcium in the arteries of the heart. The problem with calcium score is that it's only showing calcium. You remember we talked about inflamed plaque versus stable plaque? Calcium only shows stable plaque. So we still have a problem. What we need is a way to find soft plaque in the heart, in the neck, to look for potential for stroke, for things like that.
Well, I think that is a big eye-opener that we need to do these tests. It doesn't have to be a stress test. And when you mention the soft plaque versus the hard plaque, it is the soft plaque that we need to be worried about. A lot of people, they want to reverse their existing plaque. They want to do carnivore. My lovers of carnivore. They want to do keto. But it's more about keeping that plaque stable and then addressing the soft plaque. You were a patient, Dr. Brewer, your own patient that also had plaque in your arteries, and you reversed it in just 1 year, 20 years of plaque. Can you walk us through that story? It's giving people hope that if they have it, they can do it themselves.
So thanks. That touches on a couple of issues. The first is how to discover soft plaque. At that point in time, CT angiogram was not available. But CIMT was. And we can talk about both of those a little bit later. Those are the two ways now which you can really depend on finding soft plaque. Not, like I said, not a stress test. So I was age 57. I taught prevention at Johns Hopkins. I ran the program in preventive medicine there 3 decades ago. And I did all the stuff right that you're supposed to do. I walked the walk. I didn't just talk the talk. I stayed thin. That's very, very important, having good muscles, having very little body fat, and I was better in the having little body fat than I was on the good muscles. But I was also a marathon runner. At that point in time, we thought that this long, slow distance was the thing, and it is helpful. But since then, we found out a couple of things. Number one, you need to have resistance training. Number two, you need to have intensity training. But we found out something else that's the critical piece. I think one of the more critical pieces for you and your community, as it is for mine. We knew even 30, 40 years ago and before that one of the major reasons for rotting and injuring your arteries was diabetes, prediabetes, metabolic disease. The fact that so many people cannot metabolize carbs. What we didn't know 30 and 40 years ago was just how many people on the more recent NHANES, it's a part of the U.S. Census, National Health and Nutrition Examination Survey. They found a shocking number. It was at age 18 and above, over half of us have prediabetes or diabetes. And this was just measured with A1C, which is not the best measurement. So using a measurement which the ADA agrees will miss most prediabetes, they still found 52% of us, starting at age 18, have prediabetes. That's what we didn't know 30 and 40 years ago. In other words, the vast majority of us cannot metabolize carbs in a healthy fashion. So that gets back to you and your community. Your guys aren't eating carbs. And it's a good thing because most of us cannot metabolize those. If you look at my community, it's the same thing. I have a ton of carnivores. I actually have, it's sort of like Robert Lustig talks about. I get all kinds. I get folks ranging from carnivore all the way over into vegetarian and vegan. But the big thing that my group doesn't do is we don't eat carbs. And the vast majority of our folks do lean carnivore, where your folks are leaning as well.
So if somebody's listening to your story and they're thinking, wow, you reversed 20 years of plaque in 1 year, is it possible for them to get the same result?
No, it's unfortunate. When that happened to me, I said, this is good and bad. It's going to get attention, but it's also going to sound like clickbait. And both happened. It's not a practical goal to say, I'm going to get rid of all my plaque. And even with me and the 3 other people that I know that have had significant plaque reversal, that's unusual. And we still didn't completely get rid of all of our plaque. We just had a very significant decrease. We measured that through one of those 2 processes that I talked about for measuring plaque. One is CIMT, Carotid Intima Media Thickness Test. It's an ultrasound, 0 radiation. You look in the neck, the carotid artery, and you see how thick the plaque is. You can actually measure it. That test is all we had up until about 2 years ago for measuring soft plaque. About 2 years ago, CT angiogram, a technology that had been available for years, but was just not that good. CT angiogram developed an AI component to it. And the AI component has just revolutionized CT angiogram and looking at plaque. So the science of being able to understand and detect soft plaque.
Now, as Dr. Brewer mentions, you can drastically reduce your risk of plaque buildup by making some very simple changes. One really easy change is to avoid toxins in your food, in your everyday products, and even the products that we put on our skin, because chemicals in our skincare, things like parabens and phthalates, can cause disease. They can disrupt hormones and even lead to insulin resistance. Because whatever goes in your skin can enter your bloodstream. It can reach your brain, penetrate your cells, potentially causing long-term health issues. And that really made me stop and think, because I've healed so much through the Primal lifestyle. But I realized I was still exposing myself to harmful chemicals in my everyday skincare. And that's why we launched the Primal Tallow Balms and Soaps, which is our chemical-free skincare. It is packed full of vitamins A, D, E, and K2, without any nasties and no preservatives and no artificial scents. It just has one ingredient, pure grass-fed, grass-finished tallow. And I've been using the unscented soap and tallow balm, and honestly, it has been a game changer. Both products have improved my skin texture, my skin hydration, and a little goes a really long way. Like this tallow balm I've been using for the last 2 months, and I use it every day for my face and my body. And great news, our USA store is now open, which means faster shipping and cheaper prices. And right now, the Primal is offering my viewers up to 30% off for the next 7 days. So if you want to try the tallow soaps or balms, just head to theprimal.com/discount. There's also a link in the first line of the description. Let's now talk about the 5 worst foods that can lead to plaque in the arteries and worsening and stiffening of the arteries. You'll know these foods. 2 of them are actually carnivore, that probably carnivores are actually having. So I'm curious to hear your thoughts about this. The first one, kids still eat cereal. How bad is that for arteries?
Before I answer it, I left out something I want to make sure that people hear. On that last question about reversing plaque, I've only met 3 people that actually reversed their plaque, but I haven't met anyone who cannot reverse their risk. That's the most practical concern. Anybody can continue to improve their risk. What they're doing is stabilizing their plaque.
That's a good answer. Okay, it's going to give people hope. So now to the foods. The first one, as I mentioned, cereal. What are your thoughts about cereal in general?
You know, it's interesting. My community's a bunch of geeks, smart people, most of them middle-aged, and cereal was not that big of a topic for them. It's a big topic for Jesus, who you know, that works with our channel. And he had to teach me that at this point in time, still 80% of the U.S. population is regularly eating cold cereal. I couldn't believe that. Now, the place where I ran into problems for years, I don't run into them so much. Somebody would typically come to me, and they would have an issue with a different food, and I know it's an issue for you as well. Oatmeal. They'd say, "Doc, you can't tell me oatmeal is not healthy." So I got tired of having that debate. You know, it's got the little heart on the label, right? So it's got to be healthy. So I quit having, I just got worn out on that debate. One of the things I started saying was, okay, here, do this. Take your blood sugar before you eat some oatmeal, and then take your blood sugar 30 minutes later and an hour later. And I just don't have to have that debate anymore.
That's a really good example. If somebody were to wear a CGM, they can see real time what foods are going to affect them and what are going to be really terrible. So oatmeal, probably people think might be healthy, but get your CGM and see how it affects you. So cereal is not so good for you because it does raise the glucose, it does raise the insulin. So keen to understand your thoughts about this. Fake processed cheese like American cheese, like Kraft Singles. Do you think, because I think many carnivores or keto people would still eat that, do you think that's going to be healthy long term to have that?
Before we go there, can I say one other thing about cereals?
Yes, go ahead.
So I did do a video where I think breakfast cereals, and this is just a guess from my part, but I think those have done more damage to more people than most wars, maybe any of the wars that we've had, any other single item. It's because look at it. What meal gets eaten more? We don't plan breakfast. We always just have the same thing over and over and over again. And if you look at the U.S. population, again, 80% of us eat that. It's not like we eat it once or twice a week. People that eat it usually eat it every day. And that exposure to that carb is starting today, putting you on the glucose roller coaster.
Yes. So if anybody needs some reinforcement that they maybe should not have cereal, that would be their reinforcement. So getting back to the cheese, what's your thoughts about, you know, those like square processed American cheeses? Is that kind of good for someone's health?
So there's a big focus right now on cheeses, on any source of seed oils, and you see those a lot especially in processed cheeses. I've done a couple of deep dives on the evidence behind processed cheese, and I'm one of those people that's still a little bit skeptical. If you look at seed oils and the U.S. and other populations, yes, diabetes has increased at the same time that seed oils have increased, but you really don't see anything linking. The problem that you have in terms of that science is association as opposed to causation. I don't know if you've looked at that or if you've had others talking about that specific issue. I'm still in that school where I'm saying, yeah, I see plenty of association, but the causation just doesn't appear to be there yet. So we do know that causation is there with carbs and densely packed, highly processed carbs. So let's get that out of the system first, and then we'll start looking more deeply at seed oils.
I was being a bit cheeky there about the cheese, but I guess it's just some ingredients that they put in these processed type cheeses or products which might not be the best. But it's interesting, I did speak with Dr. Kenobi and Dr. Robert Lustig. Dr. Kenobi is, the one that is trying to prove that seed oils does have that connection to, cardiovascular disease. And I'd be keen to hear from the audience your thoughts, because some people are really for seed oil, saying, yes, that is the cause of disease. Some people, like you, say, there's correlation but not causation, one causing the other. And the big thing is the sugar, as you mentioned. So if we can get that out of the diet, we're going to be so much better. The next one then, not a sugar, but still a fat, pretty bad fat, margarine. Not so good.
Same thing. It's that same issue about seed oils. Are they healthy? And I did have Kenobi on my channel, and he and I had a little bit of that debate. I couldn't get him to go any deeper. But again, margarine's the same issue. Now, again, we used to hear that margarine is a healthy alternative to butter, and I think you would, I know you would agree. Why not butter? Butter's healthy. Another person that's involved in this whole debate, actually one of them that may have started some of the thing about seed oils, is Nina Teicholz. I had Nina on the channel a couple of months ago, and she said, hey, Ford, I think I started the whole debate about seed oils when I mentioned them in my book, The Big Fat Surprise. If you go back to butter, there have been not one, but two major meta-analyses. Those are the things where you take one study and look at all the studies in the science. And based on rules, based on good science, it's the best evidence you can get. And both of these studies said saturated fats are not bad for you. Therefore, butter's not bad for you.
I'd like to hear that. So do you think then that if somebody incorporates more good quality butter, that's good for their heart, that's good for the inflammation?
Well, that's what I did. I stopped buying margarine years ago and buy good old butter now.
And what is your favorite brand? Because there's also some, controversy around some popular brands, including Kerrygold unsalted butter. All the things that you hear. What is the butter brands that you love to eat?
Oh, I got hit with that stuff about Kerrygold. I was using Kerrygold at the time. I switched to a couple. We have a TJ's, Trader Joe's, nearby, and so they have, I can't remember the name. I started using that other brand, but I'm back to using Kerrygold as well.
Okay. I use the Kerrygold salted, and I love it. Apparently, on the back of the pack, it should have cream and salt, or pasteurized cream and salt, and nothing else. So, it's basic conversation, but I think if people can understand, have a look at the back of the packet, read the ingredients.
Yep.
Okay. The last food, which is not so good, you would definitely agree, orange juice.
Oh, my brother used to have 2 big old glasses of orange juice in the morning, and he doesn't do that anymore. That was back when all of us thought orange juice was healthy. I can't remember the name of the lady that sang the song about sunshine from Florida's sunshine tree. I don't know if you've seen those commercials, but the Florida citrus growers really did a number on us. That's As Robert Lustig would say, it's poison, at least if you're eating it as a fruit. The poison is wrapped in in its own antidote. But when you just squeeze the juice out, you're mainlining the poison.
Absolutely. I think some people might think, but I'm having organic orange juice, but if they have a level of elevated insulin resistance, as we mentioned before, cutting out all of those sugars, especially in the absence of any vitamins, minerals, fiber. Some carnivores don't like fiber, but all these things are important, eating whole, nutrient-dense foods. So that was the 5 foods that we should avoid. Let's get to the test to test for clogged arteries. What is the test that you would suggest is really good that they can do at home to see if they've got clogged arteries?
Thank you for bringing it up. It's one of my trending videos right now. It's called ABI. You don't need to remember that term. So most people think, it'd be interesting. Once you start getting in your 40s, like you are, you start asking questions. You start getting curious about vascular disease. Most of us assume that the only way we can find out anything about plaque or artery disease, vascular disease, is to go to a doctor. And the doctor, as I said a few minutes ago, is going to say, well, let's do a stress test. Or you can get other imaging. Now people are discovering more about calcium score. And I just mentioned a couple of other things. CIMT, which is very, very difficult to find, but it will help you find soft plaque. And I mentioned the other one, CT angiogram with AI. Well, CT angiogram with AI, that's going to cost $1,000 to $2,000. So people look at that and they say, well, that's for people that have a whole lot of money. Is there any, I wish there was something I could do at home. Well, it just so happens that there is. It's called ankle brachial index. That's what ABI stands for. And it's just using a simple old blood pressure cuff. You can get, I think this might be an Omron. I'm not sure which brand it is. You can get plenty of these for $20 on the internet at Amazon. Now, here's what this is all based on. Your blood pressure in your arms should be about the same as the blood pressure in your legs. Now, your legs have a little bit more muscle. They also have a little bit more gravity to push against, So you can see a blood pressure that's a little bit higher in your ankles. So if you do a ratio of the blood pressure in your arm versus the blood pressure in your ankles, then it should be 1 to 1.3. So your blood pressure in your ankle, if it's 30% higher, then that's okay. If it's the same amount, that's okay. If it's less than the blood pressure in your arm, that's very strong evidence that you've got plaque, enough plaque, often in your pelvis area or your thighs, to where the blood pressure's just not getting down there.
Now, as Dr. Brewer mentions, the number one way to fix your heart is to avoid sugar, even healthy sugar like juice, and try a low-carb diet. Typically, that's going to be animal-based, keto, or even carnivore. And by doing this, you'll drastically improve your metabolic health. Now, when it comes to overall health, one thing you probably haven't thought about is health insurance. And let's face it, health insurance premiums are skyrocketing. And one reason is to compensate for the increase in chronic illness. And I'm sure if you're anything like me, you're taking control of your health and you want to make every dollar count. And I have first-hand experience with health insurance, thinking a minor procedure would be covered, only to find out it's not. You end up paying for your premium and also out-of-pocket expenses. And if you're anything like me, well, that can be frustrating and confusing. And that's why I'm so proud to have CrowdHealth as a sponsor of today's episode. Now, CrowdHealth works differently. Firstly, they are not an insurance company. It's a community-based healthcare platform. This is how it works. For under $100 per month, you can get access to a team of health bill negotiators, low-cost prescriptions, and lab testing tools. And of course, you join your crowd, like the carnivore crowd, to cover unexpected healthcare expenses. And here's why it's important. Right now, it's open enrollment, the period where you can sign up. But this is where also health insurance companies can increase their premiums. So if you want to stop playing the health insurance game, try CrowdHealth. So far, CrowdHealth members have saved over $40 million in healthcare expenses. So this open enrollment Take your power back. Join CrowdHealth to get started today for $99 for your first 3 months using code PRIMAL at joincrowdhealth.com. That's joincrowdhealth.com with code PRIMAL. CrowdHealth is not insurance. Opt out. Take your power back. This is how we win. Joincrowdhealth.com. Can we walk people through how to do it, and we can put your video overlay on how you actually demonstrated it? Maybe we can first show step 1, putting the cuff on the arm. So you find the artery on the arm.
The instructions are usually right there on the cuff. And again, just get pay $20 and get one from Amazon. What the instructions will say is to put the bladder where this tube is going right next to the artery. And the artery is going to be right here. Then press the button. Now, you should be, unlike me, you should be lying down. You know, there's a whole bunch of things you should focus on. And Jesus in our channel, and you'll see it if you go through that video. You need to rest for 5 minutes. You need to lie down, not stand up. Because as I said a few minutes ago, obviously I'm going to be having more push from my gravity with my blood pressure if I were to take it while I'm standing up. I just got an error, and I think it's because I'm moving around and talking.
No, it's okay. I think it's just for the audience to understand that the blood pressure cuff, you put it on your arm. So we'll demonstrate it over the video, which is, right there. So you get your right arm, you're nice and relaxed, lying down, breathing. Jesus was making Dr. Brewer calm down, relax in the video, and then taking your time. And then you get the blood pressure on this side, systolic, diastolic, and then on the left side. And then you'll do the same thing on both ankles. Can you explain what systolic and diastolic means?
So there's a couple of places in blood pressure where you're focused. Systolic is the upper number. And if you go higher than that, the cuff stops the blood flow. So that's why you don't hear it above that. If you, as you continue to go down in pressure, it stops at another number. That's called diastolic. So the upper number is systolic. The lower number is diastolic.
Okay, perfect. And then what's the instruction in terms of get your highest systolic number, divided it by?
The systolic number for your legs, or vice versa, the legs over the arms.
Okay, it might sound a bit confusing now. People are like, what the heck are they talking about? I'm going to link your video in the show notes so that people can check it out. I think it's just really important for people to be aware that you can check it out at home to see if you have a level of inflammation, clogged arteries, without having to do the expensive test. So thank you for demonstrating and showing the blood pressure cuff. So the next thing I wanted to ask you was, we mentioned these fancy tests that people can do, but also being preventative. What labs should somebody ask their doctor to prevent getting a heart attack?
That's a great question. Thanks for asking, because I think that's one of the real big differentiators. If you look at, again, evidence, research from Hopkins as well as other places, they're very clear. Part of the reason that so much prediabetes is being missed is because 3/4 of docs don't know how to test for it. They don't know how to diagnose it. That's not my opinion. That's research proven from the research centers in this country. And we're not talking about surgeons either. We're not talking about orthopedists. We're talking about family practitioners, internists, and cardiologists do not know how to diagnose it. One of the reasons they don't know how to diagnose it is that they are using the wrong lab tests. The vast majority of diabetes that is diagnosed got diagnosed because of a fasting glucose. The ADA, American Diabetes Association, in their own white papers has said you missed the vast majority of diabetes with that test. So what's happening is people are getting all the way through years, perhaps decades of prediabetes, and rotting their arteries before their doc is ever discovering this. If you ask a doc, the docs are usually going to say, no, we use A1C. That's a test where it looks at glucose that has attached to the hemoglobin in your bloodstream. A1C is way too late as well. Both the ADA and the American Association of Clinical Endocrinologists have said you can miss more than half of diabetes and prediabetes from using these tests. So I go back to some basic tests that doctors just don't use. For example, one of them is OGTT, oral glucose tolerance test. That's where you may have heard of it. Most women that have been pregnant have had a version of it. You fast for 8 hours. You go in, you get glucose and insulin numbers. Then you, fasting, then you drink some of that glucose, and then you see how well your body manages that glucose, how well it gets it through your bloodstream and into your cells where it's safe. That's the glucose tolerance test. Then you can do a thing called insulin response, the amount of insulin that it takes to get that sugar out of your blood and into the cells. Again, in the blood where it's causing inflammation and damage, into the cells where it's safe. We do another set of tests, which, again, most docs don't do. It's called fractionation or NMR. You know, we talked earlier about LDL, quote, bad cholesterol. That's basically what docs tend to do. They look at that and they say, okay, if your LDL's high, take a statin. We don't do either of those things. We don't recommend statins for a high LDL, and we don't just look at LDL. When we do look at LDL, we look at the entire bell curve of LDL and HDL. That's called fractionation. Why does that matter? You may have heard this. I'm sure you've had people come on and talk about the, quote, small, dense LDL that caused the damage. I don't think it's quite so much the small, dense. I think the small, dense are clearly what we call a biomarker. No matter which side of this debate that you fall on, whether you say it's ApoB or LDL versus no, it's metabolic disease, where you and I would fall, I think almost all physicians agree that these remnant cholesterols, and again, pardon the tech terms, I'll give me a second and I think I can get there. Remnant cholesterol, these big particles that are carrying triglycerides, fats, those particles are very much associated with arterial damage. Now, let me walk that back for a second to say why we would look at lipids or cholesterols and see if we can find metabolic disease. As I said before, over half of us, by the time we're age 18, are not metabolizing carbs correctly. What happens when when you can't metabolize carbs? Your blood sugar goes up. What happens when your blood sugar goes up? Your brain, there's some cells in your brain that recognize that, and they say, hey, put out more insulin. So high blood sugar is almost always going to be accompanied by high insulin. Now, if you think about the purpose of insulin wants to get that blood sugar burned up. So it wants to get the sugar out of the blood and into the cells, but it also stops you from burning fats. So what starts off as a simple problem with burning one of your two major fuels, carbs, very quickly turns into a problem burning fats as well. That is the essence of metabolic disease. Suddenly, now you can't burn either of your fuels. And when that happens, then your body's your triglycerides go up. So your body's trying to burn those triglycerides, those fats. It can't do it. I hope I didn't butcher that and make that way too complicated.
No, I think that you provided the test that people can look at. So it's not just the plain LDL. And you're trying to explain that when your blood sugar goes high, insulin's job is to push the blood sugar down. And then that gets overwhelmed. And then that's where that can push up your triglycerides and it can push up other inflammatory markers. So what you're trying to say is it's not as easy as, what the regular doc might just check and then scare the patient to say statin. That's kind of what you were talking about. Is that kind of correct?
That is correct. And in fact, in this day of low carb, a lot of your folks are going to have really sky high LDL. If I go like way low carb, my LDL will go from my normal 70 to 80 up to 180 and then above.
Yeah, I see so many people that say the same thing, but they say, all of their issues just have been fixed. And that's in the presence of maybe elevated HDL and low triglycerides and other markers that the doctors are checking. So it's not just, looking at LDL. But yeah, that kind of happens as well, especially when we're kind of on the leaner side like we are. It can just shoot up and then you get scared. Last question for you. What are your 3 best tips to prevent a heart attack and unclog the arteries?
Number 1, test, don't guess. If over half of us have problems with prediabetes, why don't you just test for it? You don't feel it. So it's really clear we don't have to live in a reality where we hit our 60s and then we can have a heart attack and die. That's not necessary. There's a huge opportunity here. But you have to know if you're one of those people that's having problems. If you're not one at age 20, you're going to be by the time you're age 50 or 60, clearly by the time you're age 70. I've got tons of patients, and if you look at the evidence, the probability of not having prediabetes at least or diabetes by the time you're age 70 is like 10%.
Wow. Do you have a patient that stands out to you that has this amazing transformation that you've helped in your clinic?
Oh, we get it all the time. We get those kind of transformations before they even come to us. Somebody will come to us and they'll have lost 30, 40. We've got a couple of patients that have lost over 150 pounds. And they did it by looking at my channel, your channel, other low-carb channels, and realizing that, hey, I got a problem. I need to change my diet. So what I'll typically get is I'll say, well, how did you lose that weight? And they'll usually say, first thing, I stopped my carbs. Second thing, so I got off of this glucose roller coaster where, the highs and the lows. Then I started doing intermittent fasting. Now, for most people, intermittent fasting is skipping breakfast. It's better to, physiologically and scientifically, it's better to skip dinner. But socially, that's a lot harder. Most people I'll have couples that'll come in, middle-aged couples, and they both want to do this, so they will skip dinner. But most people skip breakfast. The next thing I'll ask is, have you tried? And they'll say, great, I'm glad I've saved my life. I appreciate hearing that from you, somebody that does this all the time. But what's the next thing that I can do? And I'll usually suggest doing some trials of prolonged fasting. I don't get a whole lot of takers on that.
You don't get a whole lot of takers on that one?
On prolonged fasting for over 24 hours.
I don't blame them. Some people are really loving the prolonged fasting, but fasting can be a little bit hard I don't fast that much, but I'm definitely an avid intermittent faster. So that's a really good tips. Lower the carbs, do some intermittent fasting, and if you're still stuck, do some prolonged fasting. Was there anything that we didn't cover in this conversation?
Yeah, so actually, to the point about fasting, I would say as you start, I've got a lot of people that are aging into their 50s and 60s. Up until age 50, population-wide, the bigger problem is too much body fat. 60s and beyond, it's muscle loss. Muscles are your best metabolic engine. Metabolically healthy muscles bypass ailing insulin receptors. So do not forget about muscle. And my generation, the boomers, we discovered jogging, but then we thought that the mistake that we made was we thought that jogging was it. They've done crossover studies that are very, very clear. High-intensity interval work and resistance training are really important. There's some receptors called GLUT4 pardon the technical term, but these receptors bypass ailing insulin receptors. So we got to work on our muscles.
I think that was the best advice out of the whole episode, to build your muscle and make sure that you're protecting your muscles as we age. Dr. Brewer, thank you so much for your time. All the links are going to be in the description. You're helping save people's lives, and I love that.
Thank you so much, Raina. I appreciate it.
If you love this episode, check out this one with Dr. Philip Ovadia, all about how to fix your heart, why high fat is important, and why eating 12 eggs a day is going to save you. Thank you for your interest in root cause healing, and I'll see you next week.